Welcome to episode 134 of the Kaiju Network podcast. I am your co-host Kent, and with me is your other
Jason, what's
co-host.
going on, peeps?
So here we are. We are covering a movie that neither Jason nor I have seen before, and that is
Oh,
that the only time
right,
that's ever happened is when we've had.
right here.
Oh, you made the mistake. I'm like, wait a minute, what did I do?
I'm
Um,
trying. I'm trying to point this way, where the whole thing is located, right there.
Okay. But yeah, the only time that it's happened in which we've covered a film that we've not seen before are new theatrical releases, such as last year's 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters and so on and so forth. But this is a movie that has been out for technically like 3.5 years now. Colossal, starring Anne Hathaway, Jason Sedakis. And this is a film that I personally have had in my possession, excuse me, for really ever since it came out on Blu-ray and DVD, which I believe was early 2017, if I recall. And I had not seen it up until now. And we will kind of get into that here in a bit. But a little bit of housekeeping work here. Here in like 3 or so weeks, Jason is going to be visiting moi, and we're going
Yeah,
to end
whatever.
up doing probably one long sort of online panel of sorts. And for those of you who are listening to the audio podcast, I put that in quotes. Panel where we sort of, since G Fest is canceled this year, we are looking to sort of do something in a panel form. We don't know what we're going to cover. We don't know if it's going to be a multi-topic panel or if it's going to be one themed panel or what it is. We will be discussing that in the weeks to come. We don't know the date or anything like that either, but it will be sometime during the week of the 5th through the 11th, sometime in there, and is when we'll do it, and we will let everyone know, of course, ahead of time, so that way you can bookmark it. And you better bookmark it too, because what else do you have going? So
Absolutely
we'll keep
nothing.
everyone in the loop about that.
Right. And the other thing I just want to mention before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything is that not only we're just on YouTube here, but we're also on Twitch, D Live, and Periscope for the streaming networks. And then as far as the audio version of our podcast, which comes out later, they'll be available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn. And then you can like and subscribe to us here, and as well as some of the other listed social media places on the screen there. Just search for Daikaiju Network, and you can follow us at our own website at daikaijunetwork.com. So, probably one of the other things I want to touch upon is that the Godzilla vs. Kong film, they finally got a composer announced here, I think the other day. I'm not sure when specifically. And it is Junkie XL. And he's probably, some of you might have known the name of this person. He has collaborated with Hans Zimmer on some of the projects, as far as um, yeah,
Man of
Man of
Steel,
Steel, Batman v Superman, Mad Max, like the new Mad Max movie, Deadpool,
Fury Road.
and then
I think, didn't he do at least one track, if not the entire soundtrack of Pacific Rim?
that's not from what I've seen listed on his Wikipedia thing of all the things that
Let me
he's
double check. I
scores.
got that score up here.
But yeah, he's also done Dead or Alive, and as well as the upcoming Zack Snyder's Justice League, which would be, I think, pretty promising here. And then the other thing, as far as Godzilla versus Kong here, is that the MPA has done the official rating for the film to be a PG-13, which is really not a surprise for basically most of us here. I mean, uh, for some of these monster films, I don't think when it comes to things like Godzilla and Kong and other things, it doesn't really need to be rated R or anything. But um, what can you expect? And the other thing that I wanted to point out as well. Let's see here. If I can bring up my browser here, um, is that Mego Corporation has announced a licensing agreement with Super Riot Productions for Ultraman. And they're particularly known to do these 70s retro kind of figurines. I don't know if you've seen some of these at comic book stores where you've seen like these retro, old school looking Star Wars or Star Trek figurines or other sci-fi TV shows of the like, and they're pretty cool in a way. And I think they're probably more of a collector's item, especially with the packaging that they come in. So it'd be pretty interesting and how this Mego Corporation will design some of these figurines. They're going to be mainly focusing on like the really early versions of Ultraman. I think they might have signed made a license agreement on just the first Ultraman series, or maybe a couple more. I'm not particularly sure. I haven't delved too much into this article, but I think it'd be pretty interesting on how they go about with how these figures look. So yeah, that's about it. So what did you come to find out?
Yeah, I was wrong. I thought I had seen his name at least for like the main theme of Pacific Rim, but no, I was wrong. I must have seen it elsewhere, but I thought he was involved at least with the main theme of
Yeah, I
Pacific
thought
Rim.
so.
So, anything else as far as housekeeping?
Otherwise, I think that's about it. Besides touching upon the confirmed rating for Godzilla vs Kong, the composer, and then as far as that Mego Corporation Ultraman license agreement.
Alrighty, so with that, we're going to get into our discussion of 2016's Colossal. And like I said, this is the first time either one of us has seen it. I've had it in my possession ever since it first came out on Blu-ray and DVD in, I believe, early 2017. And the main reason why I haven't seen it until now is because I heard a lot of mixed reviews from actual Kaiju fans. So I kind of held off on it. And so, kind of a few weeks ago, when we decided we're going to get back into a discussion of a film, we had suggested Colossal because neither one of us had seen it. So, here we are. So, just a few little things about Colossal before we dive into the synopsis and then the discussion. Colossal was released in 2016. It made $4.5 million worldwide, while its budget was $15 million, so it lost money, sadly, which is quite a bit. I knew it lost money. I didn't realize it was that much. The most popular thing, the thing that this movie is probably most popular for is that Toho sued Voltage Pictures for an unauthorized use of Godzilla's image, but the lawsuit was later settled. The film is scored by Bear McCreary, who also scored 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, so there we go. So here is a synopsis of the film, which I realized I should have just written out into an actual um, thing because my synopsis got to be a little bit longer than I thought.
Way to go.
But here we go. The synopsis of Colossal, starring Anne Hathaway and Jason Sedakis. Gloria, played by Anne Hathaway, lives in New York City with her boyfriend, Tim. She is out late most nights, is unemployed, and is a heavy drinker. Tim becomes irritated with her not being around and basically being a screw up. He packs her things and tells her to leave. Gloria returns to her old hometown of Maidenhead and lives in the empty house which her parents once lived. Gloria is met it, Gloria is met up with an old friend from elementary school, Oscar, and he gives her a part-time job at his bar. However, during most nights, Gloria, Oscar, and two of Oscar's friends hang out at the bar after it's closed, drinking copious amounts of liquor. This exacerbates Gloria's alcohol problem. Seoul, South Korea is under attack from a strange monster, and after a while, Gloria realizes that the monster has imitated some of her physical movements over the past few days. Gloria begins to figure out that the playground near her old elementary school is the hot zone for materializing the monster. She tests her theory out and is in complete shock to find out that when she steps onto the sandy area of the playground, the monster shows up in Seoul and mimics every movement she makes while destroying parts of the city until she exits the playground. She tells Oscar and his two friends and even puts on a demonstration. However, she trips near the end of her demonstration, and her fall kills 200 people in Seoul. She becomes emotionally traumatized as a result, knowing she's been responsible for the death of hundreds due to her actions. But the following day, it is revealed a robot showed up alongside the monster. Oscar and Gloria realize that Oscar too can manifest a giant being in Seoul by setting foot onto the playground. Gloria and Oscar are puzzled as to why they manifest these beings every time they're on the playground. But Oscar, in his drunken stupors, becomes malevolent and reckless, visiting the playground every morning at 8:05 a.m., the only time in which the monster beings appear, and causes chaos and death in Seoul. Gloria at one point fights him back and gets him to stop. Oscar begins to have serious drinking problems of his own and becomes narcissistic. He admits to Gloria that his life has become a mess and he was always jealous of Gloria's fame and attention in school. He feels like he has power now in his life, knowing that he can affect the world in some fashion. That night, he breaks into her home and tells her to think really hard about how they gained the ability to manifest monsters. Gloria has a flashback to one morning when they were walking to school as kids. Gloria's South Korea project is blown over into the playground. Oscar goes to retrieve it on the other side of the hedges, but instead smashes her project due to his jealousy. Gloria witnesses this and becomes angry. An incoming storm, approaches and lightning strikes both her and Oscar on the head, which explains her idiosyncratic scratching of her head. Oscar and Gloria were carrying a robot and a monster toy that became their representations every time they set foot on the playground at 8:05 a.m., the time in which the lightning struck them. The two have a fight and Oscar escapes, heading for the playground. Gloria races to the playground as well and tries to stop Oscar, but Oscar holds nothing back and seriously hurts Gloria. Tim had arrived a day earlier and asked Gloria to go back with him to New York City. After her tussle with Oscar, she said she would go back with him, meaning Tim. But instead of going back to New York City, Gloria went to the only place on Earth where she knew she could stop Oscar from destroying Seoul itself. Once there, Oscar manifests his robot form and intends to do some serious damage. While everyone is running away, Gloria walks towards the robot. Since the monsters manifest in the same area of Seoul every time Oscar and Gloria arrive at the playground at 8:05 each morning, that exact location in Seoul also manifests the monsters near the playground in Maidenhead. Oscar is taken aback when Gloria's monster shows up. He tries to run away, but she grabs him and tosses him. The people of Seoul watch as the giant robot vanishes in the distance and celebrate. Gloria walks to a local Seoul bar and sheds a few tears knowing what she has done. The bartender asks her if she is okay, and Gloria asks if she'd like to hear an amazing story. The bartender says yes, then asks Gloria if she'd like a drink. Gloria stops for a second, makes a funny face, and the screen cuts to black as credits roll. This movie, in terms of how I approached it, reminds me very much of my approach to Matango. Uh, like, gosh, like 15 years ago, I believe it was. Whereas, Matango is called Matango Attack of the Mushroom
Hmm.
People, at least here in the States. And I avoided that for like 3 weeks after I purchased the DVD, thinking this was going to be a very goofy, bad film. And then after I watched it, I was taken aback at how much I loved Matango. And here, this film I've had in my possession for over 3 years, thinking the same thing. This is not going to be a fun film. And then I watch it to get ready for this podcast, and holy shit, this thing, this is an amazing movie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The when I first saw the trailers and everything to this movie, um, for some reason, I thought of something a little bit different when it came to this particular movie. But then actually seeing it several years later, I forget the specific year when this movie came out. I think it might have been the same year the legendary movie came out. I'm not entirely sure about that. Maybe 2014, 2016, somewhere around there. But this was the first time I've actually seen this movie, and it actually, uh, like everything about this movie was much different than what I expected. It's like basically how the story was set up for this. Um, like the characters, like some of them, like mainly Jason Sudeikis' character. I didn't expect him. Spoiler alert for everyone. We're going to be talking about spoilers anyways here, so just a forewarning. Yeah,
we do that for every movie.
I didn't really expect his character to be the main villain or the antagonist for this movie. I thought he was going to be more of the love interest for Anne Hathaway's character, but that didn't really turn out to be the case. It was more of this offside dude who sort of hangs around with uh, Oscar and everything. It was sort of like some of the things that I was expecting. It was not what I really expected at all when it came to this movie.
Exactly. I thought of the exact same things after I got done watching the film. Was that when I read the description of the film on the back of the Blu-ray case, my understanding was that yeah, there were tensions between her and her New York City boyfriend Tim, and that she was going back to this hometown where she meets up with Jason Sudeikis playing Oscar. And I thought, okay, like this is sort of, the stereotypical, you come back home to your hometown and you meet up with a good old friend, and then just kind of weird stuff happens to you and you try to figure out with your friend what's going on, how to
Hmm.
solve it. And that's one of the things I really love about this film, is that it's full of a couple of big surprises. One of them is like you said, Jason Sudeikis is the villain of this film. That was something I did not anticipate. Thankfully, I did not know about when people who had seen it were discussing it online. And the other big surprise is that it's not just this weird looking
That's
monster that's in there. We get a giant
that's
robot
the other thing.
monster
That's the other thing I
as
wanted to
well.
point out too is that I wasn't really expecting the other uh, monster or, for this instance, a robot. Whereas in the trailers and everything that I've known about this film for many years up to this point, I've only learned about the monster that uh, is controlled by Anne Hathaway, as you can see on
Right.
uh, the poster off to our right on the screen here. Um, and the other thing that I was sort of amazed about is that these monsters are pretty much controlled from these two characters on the other side of the planet, I sort of expected something to be more like a Pacific Rim sort of deal, where these monsters would be almost like right there with them, but they're basically on the opposite side of the world. Whereas we've seen it like throughout the entire film, and even at the final part of the film where she goes to Seoul to confront Sedakis's uh, monster, or himself, where she brings the monster to that part of the world where it comes, grabs
To the Maidenhead.
to get Oscar there, and then throws him like on the other side, which I wasn't really expecting that part too. But yeah, that's the one other surprising thing about this film.
Yeah, unlike you, I knew that she had some sort of connection with this monster, and I knew going into it, this monster was attacking Soul. I didn't realize that it was a manifestation of sort of like her psyche almost. I thought it was a monster that actually existed
That's
in the
what I thought
real
too.
world, but that somehow she had a weird connection to, somehow was able to control it. Um, this film um, is, and I'm going to use the G word, is genius. Um, First of all, I can't think of any films off the top of my head in which, kaiju films that is, in which you have a story that's kind of like this, in which you have people being able to manifest kaiju and being able to control them, and have an effect on them on the other side of the planet. But then you visit that other side of the planet and you can manifest them on the
Mm.
opposite side and control them. It's just it's incredible. And one thing I want to quickly just sort of maybe ask you is, do you consider this maybe a kaiju film? The kaiju moments are brief. You probably, I don't know. I have not officially timed this. My guess would be you get maybe 10 minutes or so of actual kaiju action on screen throughout the entire film. Do you consider this a kaiju
For
film?
me, when it comes to possibly the timing of it, I haven't timed it either. Uh, I would say 10 minutes is a little bit too much. Uh, from what I've seen, I'm probably guessing it can be maybe about, oh, 4 or 5 minutes at least. Um, but I probably would still consider it as a kaiju film. Is that, I mean, you got giant monsters and robots roaming around a town full of many people causing destruction, and without even realizing it or just kind of confronting one another, just kind of setting aside both Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis uh, here for a moment, and that they'll interact with one another, uh, and then maybe duking it out here and there. But yeah, I probably would still consider this um, as a kaiju film, but I would say more sort of like a different side of the kaiju story in a way. Is like, what if, like, for some reason, some freak of nature of some sorts that we've seen in the backstories, where the lightning or some maybe extraterrestrial sort of phenomenon just sort of hits you in the head, like with lightning, and then all of a sudden just uh, spouses these monsters on the other side of the planet. And I think it's kind of a genius way, or kind of another take at the whole kaiju genre.
Yeah, I mean, I consider it a kaiju film as well because I thought about this for a bit too after had seen the film, and I thought to myself, is it technically a kaiju film? And I thought to myself, I go, you know what? I think it is because despite the limited kaiju action you see in the film, Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, for example, I believe the kaiju are only on film on screen, excuse me, for like 6 7 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but it's very small, and from the entire live action Godzilla library, Monster Zero has the least kaiju screen time in the Godzilla franchise, that is. And it is a beloved film by many fans, at least here in the Western
Hmm.
Hemisphere. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is a kaiju movie, not just because the screen time is limited and all that, similar in fashion to Monster Zero, but it does actually, the story does center around what happens to the people of Seoul, South Korea, in this film. The actions of Sedakis and Hathaway when they step onto that playground at 8:05 a.m. each morning has dramatic consequences, and the entire story revolves around their growing tension and conflict between each other about what happens there, or in Anne Hathaway's case, what should not happen
Hmm.
on that playground during that time each morning. And this is a kaiju film, and so yeah, again, I go back to saying that this is a very genius film. It's something entirely different that has not been seen at all within the kaiju genre. And I mean, I'm showing my hand basically already, but I don't know how else to present my own, basically giving it away. But this is a phenomenal film. Um, Despite there being not a whole lot of kaiju action on screen in this film. Uh, the film is incredibly entertaining.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, Monster Zero has the least amount of Godzilla action on screen out of the entire live action Godzilla films, and that is by and large a fan favorite here in the States. And part of that is due to the fact that you have characters that people enjoy and or connect with on some level.
Hmm.
And that's what happens here in Colossal. This is a very character driven movie in similar fashion to Monster Zero. Uh, the writing here is superb, not just throughout, but because it's such a character driven story. The characters of Gloria, Oscar, in particular, are magnificently written. Sedakis, in terms of how his character is written, but also how he's acted, is phenomenal. This is a character like we had talked about earlier, where initially we went in thinking, okay, this is your childhood friend that you're going to connect with. This friend is going to help you through your troubling experiences. That's not true. He's the villain, and he starts out friendly, but then gradually becomes more malevolent as the movie
And
progresses. And
the other thing that I like too is that at the beginning of the film, where Anne Hathaway's character Gloria, where she's just like unemployed, drunk at almost every night, and then it sort of starts to gradually transition her character to more being like not being that sort of person, whereas Oscar, I'm guessing that he wasn't like that at first, but we see him not really being like that at first, but sort of slowly transitioning to the opposite side of where Gloria's
yeah,
was at the beginning of the film.
exactly. You brought up something I was just about to say. It's a pendulum swing.
Great minds think
It's a
alike.
pen Yeah, it's you start out with the drunk and it just swings over. It's I like it. I just like it an awful lot. I was just amazed at how this film not only was structured, but how well it was written, because this is the problem. And I've talked about this, I know, ad nauseum about Shin Godzilla, and I have talked about it here and there about King on this podcast for the last year and a half, even though we have yet to discuss that film.
Soon.
My problems with those two films, at least one of the problems with each of those two films, is that you don't really have good characters. You don't have characters that you can connect with. You don't have characters that you are sucked in to their stories, to their plight. They're just like, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again because I think it's important for this particular discussion to provide comparisons to. Shin Godzilla really did not have any characters that had much of an arc or any sort of progression towards a particular end, so to speak. In a way, they did, but it wasn't sort of like a character change. It's not like having a character who starts out the movie wimpy and then becomes brave by the end of it to fight the bad guy. Those characters, by and large, are the same throughout. There's nobody to connect to, not to mention there's really no character to like there in that film. King is similar, in which you have the main character who's sort of a kind of a wussy type of character and doesn't really change at all throughout the course of the film. There is no story, there is no arc to be had with those characters in those films, and that's part of the reason why I have issues with those films. Not to mention, I do not think those characters in any of those two films that I've mentioned are well acted. You go to Monster Zero, you have characters who do have an arc, who are represented by great actors, and Nick Adams, Akira Takarada, Akira Kubo, Kumi Mizuno, Jun Tazaki, etc. You have characters that can carry the film when the giant monsters are not present on screen. And that's one of the things that I really love about this film. It is sort of a character study. You have the drunken girl who has just been thrown out by her boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend. She goes back to her hometown. Sounds like a stereotypical story of many sorts. And then she's befriended by an old childhood friend, again, sounding very similar to many stories we've seen in movies and read in books before. But instead of sort of being this ally, ends up becoming the villain. And then you start to really dive into his part of the story. The first half of the film, you have Gloria's story, the drunken, just sort of careless, reckless individual who starts to gradually clean up her life. And then you have this other person who is her childhood friend, seemingly on the surface like, the good old boy. And then you realize gradually as the movie progresses, no, he's got a dark side to him. And especially after he realizes he can manifest a monster himself, he's like, wow, like, I've been jealous of you my entire life because you were the girl who always wrote short stories and won the short story contest every time in school. I've always been jealous of your fame and popularity. Now I have meaning in this life. I can affect major change in this world somehow. And I'm going to take advantage of that by being the biggest asshole ever. And it's just, it takes these wonderful twists, because like you and I just said a little bit ago, we were both surprised Sedakis ends up becoming the villain in the film. Even after Anne Hathaway confronts Sedakis the first time and slaps him and he walks off the playground, I thought to myself, okay, they'll patch things up. There's going to maybe be some bigger bad down the road. Like maybe one of Sedakis's friends is also able to manifest a monster or whatever.
Like he's probably hiding somewhere in the trees or something of the sorts, or far away, just seeing what's going on there. and realizing
Yeah,
it.
I thought someone else was going to come along that we had seen
Or
maybe earlier in the film would actually be a big bad,
or
so to
like one of those
speak.
other two guys.
That's what I was thinking. I thought maybe one of his friends, Joel, and I forget the other guy's name, the former crack cocaine addict guy.
Yes,
I thought maybe one of them was going to come into
yeah,
play. That doesn't happen.
speaking about that, that one scene where like all four of them were like after the bars, like kind of getting towards the end of the film, where he was just drinking that bottle of Jack Daniels there. I'm thinking, and where he was just like just being a complete asshole to almost everyone, and he's just like, "We all know what you're doing. Like you're smoking crack in there." Is like, "I'm not gonna tell anyone. Not gonna call the cops." Like that whole scene right there, it just felt a little bit cringy in a way and just felt really
Yeah.
awkward.
Props to Sedakis on his acting here, but also the writing in terms of presenting dialogue. That's one of the things I wanted to get to was the
Yeah.
creepiness of Sedakis. I actually got scared of him in that moment in the bar during their after hours, and I got scared of him too when he sneaks in later to Gloria's house and they start, excuse me, chit-chatting right before they have
Well,
fisticuffs.
and when she finds
It's
out, like, with all the flashbacks and everything, that that he was the asshole the whole entire time.
well, yeah, and he has, I think if I remember correctly, two moments in the film in which he sort of repents and he's sorry for his actions. And I thought that final time in which he says sorry, in which Hathaway visits him at his place and she sees just
Like
the
how much of
mess
a
of a
hoarder he
place he lives
was.
in. Yeah, and he really is like sorry. He's apologizing and he's saying, "Look, I want you to continue working at the bar, etc." And she goes, "Well, you have to promise me no more after hours, no more drinking, that sort of thing." I thought, "Okay, like maybe there's going to be a turn here." No, he doesn't change. And he gets creepy at various points. It's like I legitimately was feeling like holy crap, like this guy is a friggin'
Mhm.
psychopath. And I was legitimately like scared of
Yeah,
him at a couple of
and
points in this
I
film.
know I've uh probably have seen some of his movies in the past too, but out of all the movies that I probably have seen him in so far, I probably say this is probably the best one I've seen him act.
Hmm.
As far as being like a believable character and being a complete asshole too. And I think
Yeah, he does a wonderful job
he
of
does a
that.
wonderful job, yeah, being an asshole for the
And I
character,
love
yeah.
Anne Hathaway in that she portray I don't watch The Princess Bride, and I know a lot of people, including guys, have watched those Princess Bride movies that she's in. I've never
I
seen them.
haven't either.
I am not interested in them, but a lot of people have said how good of an actress she is in them, and I guess those are the movies that sort of brought her to the forefront in the acting world. I know her more from Dark Knight Rises as
Hmm.
Catwoman and I liked her in that. But I think she's better here. And like the fact that she starts off, the way she acts when she's drunk.
Oh,
Gets this toughness about her as well that I find to be very believable. I really enjoy her transformation because again that shows that there's an arc in her character, but on top of that it just shows her ability to portray these attributes and characters
you,
incredibly well.
you may
I
want to
really enjoy that.
you may want to repeat some of that stuff because your screen really froze up and I didn't even hear a a lot of the stuff there.
Ah, damn it. Um, I really like her ability to show kind of this weak, drunken character at the beginning of the film. And then she gradually transitions more to this sober individual who gradually shows some toughness to her as well. It's a believable portrayal, it shows an arc to the character. And I buy her ability to go from being this drunken, reckless, careless individual to being this person who's on the mends and is starting to like just stand up for her values and is willing to just like literally go hand to hand against Sedakis towards the middle of the film.
Hmm. Yeah, and out of all the things that we were praising about this movie for, as far as maybe some, maybe a little bit of improvements here and there, I know I would say maybe towards the end when the monster, when you see it, like in daylight and everything instead of at night, I would say maybe some of the visual effects could have maybe need some improvement here and there. Um, and then as far as the one scene where Sudeikis sets off the fireworks and everything inside the bar, and then all of a sudden you see like these fires sort of kind of around, and then one that was on the screen there, they weren't really believable at all in a way, especially with the flames on the projector screen. I think the screen itself probably would have gone up in flames much faster than that. It's like it was just more at a standstill there the entire time. Um, but otherwise, that's probably all I can think about as far as maybe some of the improvements that the movie could have done.
You bring up the whole monster in the daylight, and this is somehow I knew you might bring this up. Here's the thing: a lot of people complain about King of the Monsters not having a daytime battle, and they're hoping Godzilla vs. Kong fixes that. First of all, that's part of the problem. A lot of people aren't confident in their kaiju being presented in the daytime and looking believable.
Well, yeah,
That's part of it.
well, true, but just the kind of the way it looked, it seemed like it just maybe needed a little bit more improvement on it, but otherwise it was still good in a lot of the scenes, but some of the shots that they had that they had the monster for that, I think they could have might have need some improvements on it. Otherwise, it's still good.
Here's the thing, though. Here's my second point that I wanted to make. I disagree with you. I think that kaiju looks phenomenal during the daylight scenes. I will go so far as to say this. I think the kaiju scenes in this film actually look better than they do in any of the Pacific Rim films and King of the Monsters. The only film in which I'm sort of so-so on as far as whether or not they might be better than is the 2014 film. The 2014 film, I think, still does a pretty good job, but I thought the visual effects, despite the fact that the budget for this was 15 million, I thought the visual effects were phenomenal in this film. I was really taken aback as to how good this whole thing actually looked. Yes, most of the action is during the nighttime. A lot of that too is because the technology just hasn't been advanced well enough yet to make this sort of thing look very believable during the daytime. And I know a lot of people have complaints about that. We heard an awful lot of that last year with 2019's King of the Monsters. But that's part of the reason, really the main reason why you'd have yet to see any main daytime battles and kaiju action in these films, because a lot of these companies are like, we just can't really make them look that believable. Here in this film, I really believe it looks pretty darn good. I really liked how it looked in that moment.
Hmm.
As far as my actual, any sort of like actual complaint I have about this film, yeah, the complaint I really had, and it's a nitpick. It's the other one that you brought up, was the whole big firecracker in the bar there. I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, this thing's gonna go up in flames, and I was like, okay, well, you have like 3 or 4 fires going on around you, but the rest of it isn't going up in flames. Like, I did find that to be a little odd,
And
but to me that's such a nitpick. It doesn't really matter much to the whole story. I was just like, okay, like that's a little bit of a ding, but it's nothing that's gonna really affect the overall story of this film.
um, otherwise, I can't really think of uh, really anything else. This might be a short, short episode or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to go into like a play by play of this whole film. The thing is that, I mean, man, like it really is about the characters. This is some of the best character work I have ever seen in a kaiju film. Um, whether you compare it to the anime trilogy of Godzilla, or you compare it to anything else, Godzilla, Gamera, etc., that has live action films, the character work here is phenomenal. It is a very character driven story. It is about Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis and their conflict, as far as just how they comport themselves, how they go about handling this unique ability that they have to manifest giant creatures in Seoul, South Korea, when they step onto that playground at 8:05 every morning. Um, it's an incredible character study. And one thing I thought about yesterday, but I think it would require multiple viewings of this film, is that I think under this film, I think there's a multiple layers of sort of commentary, so to speak, about kaiju films in general. Uh, Involved. Hey, there you go, Anne Hathaway, scratching your head there. Um, I think there's actually some sort of commentary on kaiju films in this movie, but you really have to, I think, view it multiple times to really get that. I think in many ways there are some sort of, not necessarily Easter eggs, but sort of like, here's the thing. It's just kind of hard for me to explain. Um, I think there's sort of a duality at work here with this film. You have the kaiju films where you have like Godzilla versus a monster or two, maybe a friend or not, and then you have Gamera versus a monster or two. I almost think this film, in some respects, is the opposite of that, but at the same time, a parallel. It's sort of commentating on man versus man, but at the
Hmm.
same time showing some of the kaiju stuff. So you have Godzilla versus um, Anguirus here. You're seeing Godzilla fight Anguirus. And once in a while in some of those films, you have man versus man in some shootouts or whatever. But mainly it's about the giant monsters fighting each
Mm.
other. Here, man versus man, the monsters are sort of an illustration
Right.
of what the people are in some of those Japanese films. And it's at the same time a parallel. If any of that makes
Hmm.
sense, it makes sense in my head. But it's
Yeah, it makes sense.
um, so. I almost feel like this is a reverse kaiju film in a way, where yes, you have kaiju, and in a way that is sort of a centerpiece of the film, but it's not what the entire film is about. The entire film is about the personalities and the relationship and the conflict between Hathaway and Sedakis and how they handle this this new ability that they have discovered. The whole sort of Stan Lee slash Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility deal comes into play here. And it's genius. Again, I use that G word. Genius. It is a reverse kaiju film. It sort of looks at that duality that is rarely, if ever, looked upon in any other kaiju film, and it puts that more in the forefront here. But at the same time, still showing you just enough of the kaiju aspect to sort of give you kind of an idea of the consequences of their actions
Hmm.
here.
The one thing that I did maybe forget, I don't know if we've ever even brought this up. Um, what do we think about the designs of the kaiju that uh, Hathaway controls, and as well as the robot, the giant robot that Sedakis controls? What do you think of the designs? For me, anyways, I think they're a pretty unique design, and to me, when it comes to the giant robot that Sedakis controls, uh, to me, it sort of, kind of looks a little bit like uh, a Pacific Rim giant robot that we've seen in a ways. Maybe I I'm not sure there's any specific type of robot that might look close to that one,
I do.
um, but I know it's a lot of those like the uh, giant monster versus giant robot type of things that we're sort of seeing nowadays, and I think that's sort of kind of the trend and the like. But as far as uh, the monster that Hathaway controls, I think it's a really unique design. It sort of reminds me, oh gosh, that one.
I am Groot.
No, it sort of reminds me of this one PlayStation game. It's like Shadow of the Colossus. It sort of reminds me of those type of huge giant monsters from that game in a ways, and it's a really unique design, but also it kind of also resembles one of the Ultraman uh, monsters
Bemular.
as well. That and maybe that one oh sea monster, that sea creature, with kind of has that face resemblance of the monster, like from the original
Oh, are
Ultraman.
you talking about that ape looking like seaweed creature that's like episode 6 or
Something
whatever,
like
the
that.
original
Yeah,
Ultraman?
something like that. Yeah,
It sort of also reminds me of Pigmon a bit
that
too in
too.
the
Yeah,
face.
yeah. More in
Um
the face though, but yeah,
yeah.
I think the designs for both this monster and the giant robot are pretty unique in their own right, but also kind of resemble some of those more familiar uh, robots and kaiju all that we all remember from the past.
Yeah, and I think that's intentional. For me, originally when I saw like the design of this before I had even seen the movie, I looked at um Hathaway's creature, and I kept thinking on some level Groot from Guardians of the Universe or Guardians of the Galaxy, excuse me. And I just thought this is a wooden type of monster. It's made out
I
of
can't see
wood.
any
It just
resemblance.
kind of looked like that to me in many ways. But I see a lot of what you're seeing there in that monster. Uh, I looked at Sedakis's robot and I thought, yeah, it's pretty cool, but it reminded me of, I believe the robot's name is Shockwave from the
Oh, you're
Transformers
talking about the
universe.
Transformers. I was more
Yes.
or less
Uh,
talking about the like more Pacific Rim.
yes, I know you were, but I'm saying I saw that robot. The more I saw that robot, the more I thought of Shockwave from the Transformers universe, and more specifically from the War for Cybertron video game and also 2011's Dark of the Moon movie. I saw that. Despite the fact that it may have borrowed from that particular character, I still really enjoyed the design of it because, kind of like you said, it is very much. It is very much sort of like when you see Western pop culture sort of in a visual sense describe what Japanese or Eastern giant monster films are like. It's always some sort of flesh and blood creature versus a robot. That's kind of what it seems to be. Pacific Rim also embodied that in their two films as well. And I do like that here. In some ways, yeah, it's a stereotype, but at the same way too, it's sort of a wink and a nod at the audience too when it comes to that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, other, can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I can't either. Are we ready for final thoughts and a rating?
Yeah. As far as my final comment on this film, it's like I mentioned earlier in the episode, it's really nothing that I expected it to be, especially from seeing the trailers of it and possibly like the posters that we've seen. And like up until now, I thought that we'd probably just see Anne Hathaway maybe doing some goofy stuff as her character with the monster next to her and maybe doing some stuff, but it was a complete opposite from what I've actually expected this film to be. Whereas the the monsters that these two characters control are basically on the other side of the planet, and if they go to that side of the planet, they won't be interacting with it. Where the monster will be on the other side, where they probably were originally uh, are at. And as far as Jason Sudeikis, that was a complete surprise, where I didn't fully expect him to be the main antagonist of the film, and the story for Colossal. I think it's take taking a quote from you, Kent, that is genius.
Hmm.
That it's a good form of genius in how they approach the entire kaiju genre, trying to give it more of a like a different side of the kaiju genre, a different take of it, and just sort of like showing that you know that also uh, human like humans, men are like can be the same as these giant monsters or giant robots, causing a lot of destruction upon themselves and everyone around them too. And it's a really interesting take on the whole entire kaiju genre. The visual effects are really good. Just had some gripes about it in few different areas. The monster designs are really good for this film. I think it really suits it pretty damn well. Um, Characters, as I said, they're really good in this. I really like how Jason Sudeikis plays his character in this. He does a really good job at being a antagonist and being like, yeah, just playing it pretty damn well, as well as Anne Hathaway and some of the other side characters in this film. And I really like, yeah, just basically everything about this film. And I'll definitely give Colossal here a buy.
All right. Similar to my experience with Matango 15 years ago, I had initially held off watching Colossal, although over a much longer period of time, due to believing I may not enjoy the film and the fact, too, fan reviews were underwhelming. Like Matango, I realized I should have watched this sooner as I found myself really enjoying the film. While the kaiju action is minimal in the film, a vast majority of it deals with Gloria and Oscar going back and forth over why they are manifesting these monsters and fighting each other over the fate of Soul. It's a very character driven story, with everyone giving terrific performances. Jason Sedakis plays the asshole narcissist Oscar to perfection and is scary at times. Gloria emits sympathy, toughness, and a troubled aspect exceptionally. You really root for Gloria while really hating Oscar. The effects work involving the robot and monster are spectacular, as well as the destruction they cause. The score is beautiful and captures every moment appropriately. My only regret is that I wish I had watched this much sooner. As for kaiju fans, I do highly recommend this despite there being little kaiju action. But the film brings out the dueling personality aspect of kaiju films and instead plays them out with humans while also incorporating the kaiju aspect. It's genius filmmaking that brings a fresh take to the genre. The movie sucks you in with characters' stories, and the conflict between Gloria and Oscar is entertaining and intense. A very high recommend, which obviously means it's also a buy for me.
I also would also say that's a pretty underrated film.
Under, I knew it did not perform well, and I think part of it was because I don't think it was even released to that many theaters here in the States. My understanding was it got a minimal release. And I don't know if that was by design or what, and I
Let
could be
me.
wrong, but my understanding was it was not released into too many theaters. I knew it lost money as well. I knew that, but I didn't realize it had lost virtually like, 10.5
Yeah,
million.
let me see here.
Uh,
So yeah, the film did come out in 2016. Well, actually, uh, yeah, it came out for the TIFF. I forget the Toronto International Film Festival at September 9th, 2016, which was like the official release, but then it was released in 2017, so a few years ago, which sort of surprises me that that was a little bit more recent than I thought. Um, but as far as the release here, if I can see, um, yeah, I'm not seeing much of anything. It says as far as the box office, Colossal 3 million U.S. And Canada, and then 1.5 in other territories for a total international gross of 4.5 million,
mhm.
which is sort of
Go to Box Office Mojo. Box Office Mojo, I think,
yeah.
even shows like how many
So
screens it was
box
on.
office.
I don't think it was really showing on that many
Let's
screens.
see here. Box Office Mojo. Colossal. Okay, so Colossal domestic opening was 120,000. Let's see here if we can find opening Latin America area. Yeah, widest release 327. Yep.
Screens. That's part of the problem. And I don't know
And
if that's the studio's fault or if that was even
it
intentional.
shows here for in release it was 269 days, which is in weeks 38.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing, like, I would almost consider this an indie film, really.
But it doesn't really
Because I
feel
don't
like
think
an indie film. It feels more like your
it,
typical Hollywood film.
yeah, but, Warner Brothers didn't do this, Disney didn't do it, Universal didn't do this. This was done by studios I had never heard of before until I had seen this film. And I don't know if maybe these studios are small enough to the point to where they just couldn't get a wide enough release, or like some indie films, it's intentionally given a smaller release. I would like to think that they tried to give it a wider release, but because they weren't affiliated with a larger studio, they just didn't have I guess, the push pull ability to make that happen, is my guess. I'm not surprised that this thing didn't come out onto more
Yeah.
screens, because I'm like, I don't remember this thing even being up here.
Well, I know I've seen
So
the trailers and stuff before, but as far as the distributions, like for here, it's Neon, and then Versus
right.
Entertainment in Spain, Dream Factor Entertainment for South Korea, and then Mongrel Media for Canada. The only biggest distributor or production company that I can see on this list, um, I think it's Route One. If I can remember Route One Entertainment, I think they might be the one for that are mostly known for the Trailer Park Boys, or I'm thinking about the other kind of one or entertainment or something that sounds similar to that one, but take it with a grain of salt for me on that one. So don't quote me on that. But that could be the one that I'm thinking about, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised this thing didn't do well, because I'm like, this thing, like I've said several times, I don't remember this getting a wide
Yeah,
release.
and as far
Um,
with the budget
this
that they have, $15 million, and with the visual effects and like some of the locations that they've gone to, I'm not sure if they actually have gone to Seoul, South Korea. They might have set up somewhere that make it look like Seoul.
A lot of it was filmed in British
Okay, yeah.
Columbia.
So with with the limited amount of capital that they had to make this film, they did a pretty damn good job with what they did as far as visual effects, the settings, uh, the characters, everything.
Yeah, it's an exceptional film. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes, from the critic standpoint, gives it an 81%, and this is one of the few times in which I agree with the critics. This is an exceptional film. It's very well written. I highly recommend it, despite the fact there's not a ton of monster action, but I think there's just enough there to satiate your appetite. It is more of a character study, this film is. And I think, though, it succeeds on that level. Anne Hathaway, Jason Sudeikis, their characters are very well written, and their conflict it grabs you and it holds on to you. It's intense. It's an entertaining film that just sucks you in. I mean, again, I recommend it. Um, Intensely. Like I said, my biggest regret was that I didn't watch this sooner. If I did, I probably would have told you. We probably would have covered this film like 2 years ago, if I had 2 or 3 years ago. If I had, be like, dude, no, seriously, we got to cover Colossal. Like, you're missing out on something
Yeah,
here.
yeah. It was like
And
I didn't realize that it came out sooner than that. Like in 2017, I thought it came out a bit earlier than that, like early 2016 or possibly 2014.
see, the funny thing was is that I thought it came out 2017, and then I was surprised that it was
Well,
2016.
that was when it was like when it first debuted at the Toronto International Film Festival in September 2016, but its actual release was around April or March, April, or May of 2017.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we've said our piece on Colossal. Seriously, go check it out if you haven't done so
Definitely an
already.
underrated
It's a
film.
phenomenal film. Yeah, definitely. Give it all of your money, and I mean all of your money. Um, but thank you so much for listening and/or watching us. Stay tuned. We'll Jason and I, when we get off air here, we'll discuss any possibility of maybe doing another episode before we get together here in July in a few weeks. So thank you so much for listening and/or watching, and we'll see you
And
soon.
before we sign off here, I just wanted to remind everyone again that we're on these listed podcasts and streaming networks. As far as the audio version of the podcast, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn. And as far as the live streaming networks, obviously here at YouTube, Twitch, D Live, and at Periscope. And you can follow us, like, and subscribe our content over at these following social media websites. Just search for Daikaiju Network, and you can follow us over at our own website at daikaijunetwork.com. And some little goofy things going on there for Kent. So with that, yes, thank you for watching Daikaiju
Thank you.
Network. Uh, and we'll be talking about whatever we're going to be discussing next before we meet each other again in early July. So take care, everyone.